Hello, welcome to another episode with Chats with Chelsi. Today is a special edition to our Motherhood series. We are diving into white privilege and motherhood. I have a very special guest here today, someone who's been a friend of mine for over a decade. So, Chats with Chelsi community, help me and welcome Tracy Briscoe. She is a mom of four. She is a pastor's wife, fellow pastor's wife, church planner, and just one of those sister friends that you want in your corner. Tracy, welcome to Chats with Chelsi.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I am so grateful you're here. So, we today are talking about motherhood. We're going to talk about motherhood, but we're also going to talk about white privilege. And I want to start off the interview by saying thank you for the post that you made a few days ago about white privilege. You know, everyone who's watching this interview will know that you are a white woman. You are a mom of four biracial kids. You are married to a black pastor, and we are going to dive into that today. And your post really stemmed from what's been happening in the news around Ahmad. Yet I think it is so critical for the Chats with Chelsea community to know that this isn't a issue that's new. This is an issue that we've been dealing with. And so as you hear Trace's perspective, as you hear what it means to her, know that this transcends any one case and that this is about the systematic injustices that continue to plague us in America. So let's dive in before I start with a sermon. You made a post about white privilege with 11 different points in there. It was so well crafted. I'll be sure to link it under the video when we release this. But tell us what stemmed that post and that beautifully, gracefully written post at that.
Honestly, I realized the power of my voice because I'm white. And when I began to see all of these leaders, a lot of white pastors of large churches, speak out about Ahmad, I was surprised because in the past, that's not been the case. And so as I was seeing it all unfold and hearing many people, some pastors would say they would speak up and I'm sure it was genuine, just like, I don't know what to do. Like, they would just be sad and angry. And that's a start, right? Like that, we certainly saw more than what we have in the past. However, I know that their voice, our voice, white people's voice is needed in this fight. And so as people were saying they didn't know what to do, I thought I would share just my few points of what I've learned in terms of my own privilege. And I'm still on this journey. Please hear me that was in no way to be, all inclusive, certainly was not. And I'm still learning. Like, even though I'm married to a black man, my best friend is black. I'm still aware that I have privilege that I'm unaware of, that I learn of as I continue to walk down this journey, and biases. Just because I married a black man, I think it was in the book I'm Still Here by Austin Chaney Brown. She's like, look, don't excuse yourself. If you don't sit here and tell me you got a black husband and so you're not racist. All of the excuses that we come up with as white people to say why we're not racist. Racism is not the KKK, right? Like, we all carry forms of prejudices in us, and sometimes unknowingly, and I'll be the first to say that's true in my life. The way, and I have a safe space that I'm not afraid to speak up in front of my husband and many of my close friends. And so there are many times when they're like, Tracy, you can't say that. Like, And we're able to dissect, like, well, I thought I was saying this, or I see it this way. So it's safe. So it does provide me a space to learn about my prejudices and biases and privilege. And so, yeah, that post was really just stemmed with some answers, a starting point with starting points that, or, just things that I've learned in this journey of seeing these injustices and what can I do to make a difference.
I'm grateful that you acknowledge your white privilege. I think too often um, white privilege is either minimized or denied when it is a reality. And I know there's many who may disagree with that, but it is a reality, especially when we look at the systematic injustices and disparities that continue to impact the systems here in America: criminal justice, education, healthcare, um, just the professional corporate systems. Um, and so thank you for acknowledging your white privilege. You are, Trace, you are a mom to four biracial kids, two beautiful girls and two little boys. When you, as a mom to white mom to biracial kids, what is going through your head about how you will teach them about both white privilege and the injustices at African Americans and people of color face?
You know, again, I think when I read the book, I'm Still Here, and I heard Austin Chaney Brown's story, my husband and I have had many conversations around race and the disparities and the injustices. He wrote his dissertation on how the church can lead through some of these racial crises. But when I listened to her story and examined my life, we were currently at a large white evangelical church. And I had put my kids in a predominantly white setting. And I remember hearing her as a child being in a white setting, being in a black setting, not understanding how, feeling uncomfortable in both settings. I don't know. I guess I don't want to assume everybody's read the book, but, like when she would go in black settings, she didn't know, like it was rowdier and louder. And there was, just different things that make up when a group of black people or friends get together that she just wasn't familiar with because of the two different worlds she was living in from living in a separated home. And I realized at that point, it is my job as their mother to make sure my children see people of color in authority roles in their life. They're babysitters. Like, it's not enough for my husband and I to teach on this and to know about these things and then put our kids in a predominantly white setting. Because just because their parents know this stuff and can communicate these things to them and will educate them and have them read books and watch documentaries and do our best to teach them, they also need to see people of color, doctors, dentists, lawyers, in positions of influence and power. They need to see that black is beautiful, that brown is beautiful, that their hair texture, that we need to make sure that we're shaping our kids' world to see that not just this is held on a pedestal, because that is what is elevated in America. And so we are working diligently to, we've changed all of that. Like, we realized all of their babysitters were white. And that was just because that was our network of people that we knew in the setting that we were in. And we got on at a HBCU and we hired college students from the university. And obviously that has a lot of other great factors that we are able to accomplish while having those students in our home watching our kids.
So, with the example of a babysitter, that is in the fact that you've decided to reach outside of your network. What has kept you to continue to do that? Because there may be another white mom listening to this, and she may have white kids, biracial kids, but she's thinking, that's more work for me. This could be an inconvenience to me. Why is this still so important, just as an example, as we talk about white privilege?
The reason it's important for me is threefold. One, my kids need people of color to have authority over them now, other than their mom and dad. And this is an easy way to make that happen, because they're going to listen to their babysitter, or they're going to get in trouble when we get home. Two, I'm able to use my money and invest in these students who are Black, who typically do not have the same network that white girls have. They have their parents that have a big network, that they're able to get resources and babysitting jobs easier than these students that we're investing in. And thirdly, these babysitters, I just got a text on Mother's Day, and two of the girls were on a group text, and they said, we just want to say Happy Mother's Day and thank you for being my second mom in my home away from home. We miss your babies. And that, above all of it, I mean, they will, if we're out at an event late and they're here late, they'll just stay at our house. And I love that. And so we are having a big yard party when they get back to school. We are throwing a celebration. I want to use my resources and anything that I have, my home that's filled with love, joy, peace, that's filled with a godly man that loves and honors his wife and takes care of his children and are active and present. I want them to be in our home and to see, not saying that all of them do not have that, but some of them don't. And I'm able to provide a space to love and mentor them and use my resources to, in terms of the racial disparity, as far as everything that has in the past worked against Black people and continue to work against Black people, there is a lot of work to be done, but sometimes that can feel overwhelming. Like, how am I going to affect that? How can I change that? What I can change is whose hand I put my money in. And that is a way on an individual basis that I can say, I'm going to give my money to help you be successful, to help you go get what you want, to help you, whatever you want to do with your money. You know what I mean? I'm going to put my little money in your hands.
I love the intentionality. I love the purpose. Yet again, and I may say this several times, it is just refreshing to hear not only you acknowledge your white privilege, but for you to say, Trace, that I'm going to do my part. I can't erase everything that's happened. I can't change all the systematic injustices, but I do have a part. And I think that is so key, because if there are more people who do their part, then that's where we begin to see additional systematic changes. Because for me, one of the things I continue to think about is that with many of the disparities, we've gained allies, people who say, I support you. But now it's come to a place where we need advocates. We need people to stand up. We need people to not only, go to this march with us, go to this march. We need them to advocate with their funding, with their finances, as you outlaid in your post. We need them to advocate with their networks, with their power and their influence. We need them to act more than just say, I agree with you, because as things are escalating, we need more. Tell us, Trace, one of the things you mentioned in your post is that privilege has always been about the color of skin. Let's talk about that.
Yes. Um, I'm not as, all of the laws that hindered Black people from getting home mortgages, from being approved for money that white people were approved for, that helped them what? Be successful, help them build something to pass along to the next generation. All of those laws did not allow Black people to qualify. Why? Because of the color of their skin. So don't tell me your white skin doesn't give you privilege. And the reality is, let's just look at our justice system. Let's look at Congress. Let's look at all of the white people that hold office. They are the ones making decisions. Let's look at our school board. Let's look at our principals and our teachers, because they're the ones making decisions. And as a white person, acknowledging that we all have biases, when you're dealing with students in your class, when you're in a position to promote someone or make a decision about things, many times you go with what's familiar and what's comfortable, not even knowing. You might just connect better with the white person that's up for the job, the white teacher, you might just relate better because their weekends look a little more like yours, or their rhythms and everything. So there can be a tendency to like, hey, I really connected with her, I'm going to hire her. And so we continue to elevate white people. And I'm not against white people. Like, I'm for white people being successful, but they're not the ones that are facing the disparity. Like, they're not the ones that are being discriminated against and that has this huge gap of laws working against them. So, you'll hear people say, well, what about the white people? The white people are going to be just fine. Like, the system works for white people. If you can't see that, then that's why white people need to advocate for Black and brown people. It's not because we're trying to put the white person down. And that's the fragility of white people, right? Like, that's this whole thing is like, come on, like, let's acknowledge the benefits that we all have benefited from as white people. And let's help other people benefit from our benefits. How? Let's put our money in other people's pockets that aren't benefiting from this same system that we benefit from. And so I might be getting off here, but the reality is it is very easy to make laws and decisions. Let's just even put it at a teacher level. When they're dealing with our Black and brown children, is there a tendency to maybe label a Black child differently? My sister-in-law just did her thesis on, do we maybe sign the white child up for some mental health help and care? And do they have, many of the white families have more resources to get their children the help they need if they're struggling in school. They have the network. One of my best friends is walking through that, and she lives in a neighborhood of all doctors. And praise God, I'm so thankful she's been able to get the help that she's been able to get and learn about the grants and all of the funding that's available for her to help her child. But because Black and brown people as the majority are not living in those neighborhoods, do not have that network of people to get that information. They don't have that resource or knowledge always to help their children. Or, I mean, and so, yeah.
Trace, this is so good. One of the things that you were mentioning earlier is that we were talking about you're married to a pastor. You all have planted a church. Let's talk about, as a minister yourself, a Bible teacher, a woman of faith, how you have shared and will be sharing this message to the body of Christ.
I mean, our church is from Micah 6:8. Our church is called the 6:8 Church. And Micah 6:8 is, what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. It is the heartbeat of everything that we are doing to speak up for marginalized people. And that is why we called our church what it is, because we don't ever want to forget what we feel called to do as ministers of the gospel. Jesus stood up for the poor and the marginalized. Jesus has a lot to say about how we should treat the poor and the marginalized, and how his example to stand up, to care for others, to love your neighbor as yourself. It's not just to love your neighbor who's like you as yourself. And so the very heartbeat of our church is about this. Many people that become a part of our church, this is their passion in life. And so we provide information so that, about different racial seminars, or, just so that we have a book club where we talk about, the books that we choose are books that teach about the church and race relations, so that people in our church can be educated. We believe that race is a biblical issue. It's not a political issue. And so it is important to address it in our church. And so we do that in many ways, but it's not something that is not talked about.
More churches need to talk about it. More churches need to have the conversations. What do you say to the mother, the church leader, the business leader that says, I'm afraid to advocate for marginalized people, for people of color? What do you say to them?
That's part of the cost, right? Like, we all have a network. We all have social media followers, and they're our friends. And so what we say on our platforms, what we say in positions of leadership in our businesses, it matters. And people may get mad, but you cannot remain silent because it might make someone upset. It's not okay. And so I've seen it too much. I understand why it works, because money makes the world go around, right? We don't want to make people who give us money whether you're in a business, a church, whatever organization you're running, you don't want to risk losing your financial support. Maybe it's your paycheck. And so you remain quiet because it's not acceptable to many people. But when is that going to change? Who is going to stand up and use their voice, their white voice, and offend? I don't use my voice because I want to offend my white brothers and sisters, I'm not trying to be offensive, but I am aware that I have plenty of white people that disagree with me. But that cannot dictate how I live my life and use my voice. And of the risk of upsetting my network of people, it's worth it to me. And so I would encourage that leader to think of your Black and brown brothers and sisters as yourself. Think if you were born with a different color skin. Would you want someone to stand up and maybe risk a little for you? Or do you think somehow, because you were chosen to be white, to be born white, somehow you're special, more special than the Black or brown person? To me, it's an easy answer. I understand it's hard, but living with Black and brown skin in this world, obviously I don't know firsthand, but I can imagine how hard that is.
Thank you for sharing those insights. I think that it is important and critical for white moms to know that it is possible for them to be more than an ally, that they can advocate, that they have power as we look at what's going around us in terms of just the racial injustices. Yet, Trace, as we close, what would you say to the Black mom who is afraid for their child to leave the house, who's afraid for their child to, go to college, who may be even afraid just for their child to walk down the street? What do you say to them in terms of white privilege?
I'm sorry. I am sorry, because I can sit here as a person of faith and tell you what I do when that fear comes over me for my husband or thinking ahead for my children. But at the end of the day, Ahmad's mom may have been a woman of faith. I don't know. And she may have prayed every single day for her son to not experience what he experienced. But because God gives us choice and someone chose to do this, he's no longer here. And so, yes, we need to preach the gospel. Yes, we need to educate our white brothers and sisters and ask God to change hearts. But to that mom fearing for her child, I'm sorry that is your reality, that is our reality. Because at the end of the day, there isn't a guarantee this is not going to happen again. There is no guarantee that one of our children are not the next hashtag. And so, yes, we're going to pray for our children. we're going to trust God to protect them. But that fear is very real. And I'm sorry that we in 2020 are still living with this kind of fear. For our kids to go run around the block, that we have to fear. I had a person of color in my neighborhood on our community app pose the question, am I safe to run in this neighborhood? And the reality is, as much as everyone on there wants to say yes, we could have people just like Brunswick had. And don't make me go down the list of all of our black and brown brothers who have lost their lives because of people making a choice to choose to see their skin as unworthy, less than, threatening. So I'm sorry.
Tracy, thank you again for your post. Thank you for the challenge. Thank you for using your white privilege to advocate for people of color. My hope is that this interview will reach white America just as it will reach Black America. And it'll be one of those tools that we can use in our journey forward to correct injustices, but also to heal. There's so much hurt out there, and so that we would be able to begin healing, even if it's just in our smaller community, even if it's just in our church with someone who has a different skin color than us, that we would begin that process. So thank you for your transparency. Thank you for your authenticity. And again, thank you for being an advocate, for standing up and using your platform.
You're welcome. Thanks for your time, Chelsi.
Those who want to follow you in your church, how can they do that, Tracy?
We are the 6-8 church, so 6-8 Durham, North Carolina. I'm pretty sure you can follow us just by doing 6-8. I don't know. And then, my name's Tracy Briscoe, and so I'm on Instagram if you'd like to follow me there.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you, Tracy. This has been a very, very informative conversation.
Thank you, Chelsi.